Welcome, everyone. My name is Brooke Libby. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm the Director of College Counseling at Gould, and I'm here to welcome you to the Town Hall about reopening Gould. This is a conversation tonight to present some plans that are in the making for how to reopen Gould in the fall, and we're eager to hear your questions and respond to them. The way the structure of the evening will go, our incoming head of school, Tao Smith, is here and will address the crowd for a little bit, introduce himself and some of his goals for the task force. And then we'll hear from the 3 separate task force. There's a return to campus group chaired by Olivia, Hendry, and Hayward, who will speak and show their ongoing work. There's a continuity and teaching and learning group chaired by Clarke, Sara, Shifrin, and Jason Chase that will go next. And after that, a group on finance chaired by Willis, our incoming CFO, and Bill White. After that, our communications director, Reiff, will share a little bit of the planned communication throughout the summer, so you know what to expect. And also you should know that at the end of this week on June 5th, Friday, you will receive a communication from the school that summarizes a lot of what happens tonight. So if you don't get every point or you miss a few things, don't feel concerned. And now I will hand it off to Tao Smith. And like I said before, do put your questions in the Q&A and we'll get to those after the presentation. So Tao?
Thank you, Brooke. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say right off the bat that I have the most important role here this evening. The chairs of the subcommittees that you're going to hear from this evening are the ones that are doing just a tremendous amount of work back at school. And, you know, I've been excited, my wife and I have been excited about returning to Gould from the moment that we got the news that I'd be the new head and we'd be moving to Bethel this summer. But over the past 3 or 4 weeks, as I've worked with this group of adults, this group of professionals, my impression of the school and my love for Gould has only grown. We have an amazing, amazing group of people working here to make sure that we can get back to school in the fall. And I continue to be impressed and amazed at the dedication they've shown, how hard they've been working, right through 2 of maybe the craziest weeks of their educational careers, of closing a virtual school and planning for a virtual graduation, and also doing this work to prepare for this evening. So, you know, the first thing I'd like to just say and acknowledge is how deeply appreciative I am for the faculty and administrators on this team. But I also want to confess, and my confession is that tonight, preparing for tonight has been fairly nerve-wracking for me. This is not a normal format for a new head to be introduced to his community. And, you know, I found myself right up until the moment that you started calling in, just sort of a little bit nervous and a little on edge. And I scrolled up as Brooke was talking and I started looking at the participants and I saw a lot of familiar names, recognized a lot of people, current parents, faculty members, alumni, trustees, and I saw a whole slew of names that I didn't recognize and I haven't gotten to know yet. And I think seeing all of you sign in gave me a great sense of peace and calm. We're all here this evening because we care about and we love Gould Academy and its students. This is an amazing school. It's an amazing community. It's an amazing place. I couldn't be more excited and proud and humbled and feel a greater sense of privilege to be returning to lead Gould, especially in this age of COVID. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I joked at my in a long interview this fall, I'm probably the only person who's been accepted 3 times to Gould Academy. First as a student in the summer of 1987, next as a young faculty member in the summer of 1995, and then now as an incoming head of school. And I'm coming back to Gould for a reason. I'm coming back to Gould because it's a great school. It's a wonderful community. And you know, like I said, every single passing day that I get to know people, and I get to know them better, I'm filled with deeper appreciation for this school and the community and what it is and what it means. I want to talk just briefly about our purpose and the reason the board asked me to lead the task force about a month ago. Our number one priority is to preserve the continuity of the Gould experience. And our number one concern is for your child's safety and welfare. And I say that not simply as an incoming head, but also as a parent who's preparing for the return of his children to school as well. My wife, Dawn, who is medical director of an ICU in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, we have 6 children combined. Our 2 oldest daughters are seniors in high school. They're graduating this week, and they'll be heading off to college in the fall, we hope. One to Auburn, the other one to University of Florida. We have 2 freshmen in high school that will be entering 10th grade, one at Gould next fall and another one at Gould hopefully in 2 years. And we have 2 twin daughters who are in 5th grade. They'll be repeating 5th grade at Crescent Park next year. That was pre-planned. And as many of you, I know firsthand how challenging this spring has been. Keeping our households together, working from home, being a high school or middle school or elementary school teacher at the same time. It hasn't been easy. And I think I speak for all the parents out there in saying that we long for a day when our schools can reopen. We long for a day when our kids can be back in the embrace of a caring community, surrounded by wonderful instructors and adults and role models and close to their peers and friends. We can see how much they miss that. And no virtual learning or distance learning model, no matter how great or robust it is, can replicate or replace that sense of connection and community and continuity. And that's what we're striving for. A couple of disclaimers before the subcommittees make their presentations. When we started, we discussed a number of assumptions about COVID-19 and about what next year is going to look like. And one of the assumptions that we had discussed and agreed upon is that the situation at school in the fall isn't going to be much different than the situation today. There will be no vaccine in place. We may be inching closer to a cure or a palliative care, but we're likely to be encountering similar conditions on the ground in September that we're facing today. And the truth is, even if the world, the United States, is able to rush to develop the quickest approved vaccine that's widely distributable, best case scenarios and predictions are that we're 18 months to 24 months away from that being available. So our schools as a nation either need to remain closed for a period of years, or we need to brave the conditions to prepare as best we can, to make data-based decisions, have a methodical approach, consult the experts, hear the voices of our faculty, our parents, our students, the people in our communities, and reopen in the best way that we possibly can. And we have to get this right. A colleague of mine who's a head of school in Massachusetts, his son goes to my current school, Killington Mountain School right now. He and I have talked a lot about what it means to be in education today and to be educational leaders. There is tremendous responsibility right now on our shoulders, but we can think of no greater privilege. I can think of no greater privilege than to be shaping the future of education and the learning landscape for our kids, not just for this year, but for the future. And as Gould prepares the logistics and the tactics of getting back to campus this summer and this fall, we're also doing so with an eye towards the future landscape of learning. Our kids are going to experience something that no other Gould students has ever experienced before. It's going to be different. Virtually every aspect of what we do will need to be considered and altered and changed to some degree, but it's still going to be great. It's still going to be a far better experience than what they're getting right now at home alone with us, their parents and siblings. And we long for those days. We look forward to it. And we at Gould, and certainly the people on this task force, are embracing with open minds the possibilities that exist both for this next year and for the future. There will be changes to education. The landscape will never go back to what it was before. But we think, and I believe, that it will be better than it ever was. And I'm looking forward to the work that this group is doing and will continue to do over the summer and over the course of this next year and several years. So my last closing thought, and the thing that I would like to leave everyone with, is that this evening is intended to give you an understanding of the scope and the structure of the task force and our subcommittees and what they're doing. It's not intended to answer every question. In fact, I'll be the first to profess that we don't have all the answers, not yet. It's a process we're going to go through to make sure we get the answers that we need to get and the right answers. And your voices as parents and as students is incredibly important in this process. We need to hear from you, what your hopes are, what questions you have, what concerns you have, what things you'd like our plan to address. If we have an answer tonight, we'll share it. If we don't, we're going to note your question and we're going to make sure that we address it over the course of the next few weeks and months. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening, for being part of the Gould community. I look forward to the day that I can meet you all in person. And I am a hugger and a handshaker, so I'm even more looking forward to the days that we can shake hands, clap each other on the back, and hug old friends and acquaintances. So I'll turn it back to Brooke now to the subcommittees, but thanks again for joining, and I hope to say a few words at the end.
Okay, I'm going to just pass it right off to Chris and Olivia, who are chairing the return to campus.
Was I muted? Okay, there we go. So take in this picture. Kids on the soccer field, the late September photo, the place we know and love. And it's been great to think about how to make this the reality and to have everyone back again. I want to thank the parents that we've spoken to already and students. And just a couple highlights were, they're missing the Gould community, the hashtag Gould Life. And one student said, can we have the opening of school barbecue? Can we have the slip and slide? And those are all great questions. We want all of that. I'm going to introduce our team really quickly, and then Olivia will talk about our working groups. We'll get into some of the details that we're working on, and then we'll pass it off to the next group to talk about what they're doing, and we'll have questions later. But here's our team. We have myself, the Director of Experiential Learning, Olivia Hendry, Director of Health Services, Jerry Bernier, Director of Buildings and Grounds, Deb Costello, On Snow Program Manager, and Rob Manning, Dean of Community Life. So it's a great team with lots of years of experience working at Gould in this setting. And a lot of folks that are really logistically minded and strategic, and that's really what we're focusing on right now, are the logistics to get everyone back. It's easy for us to get over our heads in the details, and we have to take this in small chunks to think about what it'll take to get everyone back.
So then our subcommittee is broken up into 3 different working groups, and those 3 working groups handle a variety of different topics. So our first working group addresses health, wellness, buildings and grounds. Our second addresses residential, dining services, and campus activities. And then our third working group is human resources, summer programs, on snow, and experiential learning. So within all of these 3 working groups, we're working to gather as much information we can from all different resources to develop the best return to campus plan. So our priorities, our number 1 priority that will guide 100% of our decision making is that during this transition and beyond will be to protect the health and wellness of our students, faculty, extended family members, and the Bethel community. Our second priority will be to focus on providing continuity in a Gould education and to ensure that the value of being part of the Gould community remains true to our 6 core principles, which are the individual student, a caring community, high standards, the life of the mind, the whole person, and the whole world. So our subcommittee and working groups, our first task has been to create a guide that covers the big picture details of what it will look like when we return to campus. We are addressing what needs to be considered and in place for all of us to return, and that we can provide an appropriate level of care for our community that delivers on our mission and on our core principles.
So as you can imagine, this is a big task for all of us to consider. And as we break down things in order of the biggest chunks that we can think about to have all of you back, it comes down to health and safety is the first, and following the guidelines of the agencies that are helping to guide all of us, the whole world, in coming back together in a community. Some of the things that we're focusing on are all listed here: quarantine and isolation, healthy campus protocols, faculty and day student expectations. That's a big one with a campus like Gould with the street running right through it. So we have to think really carefully about what that means, and with students and employees going home each day. Employee training throughout the summer to be ready for when people are coming back. Community, student activities like weekend trips, all of the things that we do that people love. Campus restrictions. Will we have a completely closed campus, and what does that mean? We can get into that later with question and answers. And one of the most important things is just the behavioral expectations that we will all need to follow to make this work. And that's really what it's going to take for this to be possible, is a commitment from all people that will be here at Gould to make it possible. The school calendar, we'll get into that a little bit later too, and some of the possibilities there. Possibly a phased start in late August, bringing people in slowly so we make sure we're doing it right and we're spaced out accordingly. New student orientation, we're looking at options for that. Hopefully it goes off as planned, but trying to address why do we do that, and helping people engage and be a part of this community would be the big core criteria to be focusing on there. And then academics, you'll hear a little bit about shortly. Residential life, dining hall, as you can imagine, some of those things will change and look very different, but we can figure that out. And athletics and co-curriculars, you can probably assume, will we have contact sports? Unlikely for the fall, but we don't have all the answers right now, but we have plenty of things that we can do here to make sure that we are keeping ourselves well, we are getting outside and taking advantage of all the positive things we can do. I'm going to hand it off to the continuity of learning team. I think that's going to be Brad Clarke, Sara, Shifrin, and Jason Chase.
Great, thank you, Chris. Good evening. I'm Brad Clarke, and I'm been honored to co-chair the subcommittee on teaching and learning with Sara Shifrin and Jason Chase. I'm going to share my screen now with you, and I've been told I have 6 or 7 minutes to talk to you on my topic, so I will be concise and we'll have lots of time for questions at the end. So first I want to introduce you to the team in no particular order. Brooke Libby, who's our great host tonight, Director of College Counseling. Jason Chase, who's here tonight as well, our Director of Technology. The indispensable Katie Stack, who's in charge of advising here at Gould and chair of our humanities department. And the irrepressible Adam Leff, the wise world languages chair. Myself, Bob Harkins, who is our new incoming athletic director. So it's very exciting to have Bob as part of our team, who's going to have a special eye on athletics and co-curriculars. Sara Shifrin, who's been exceptional in developing resources and researching what other schools are doing, and is a real leader in thinking about innovation in schools. And she's indispensable in our team. And last but not least, Lauren Parker, who's our Director of Academic Skills and who has a real eye on student learning and really keeps us grounded in the student learning experience. So I want to talk briefly about our goals for our work. Incidentally, our deadline is July 1st, so this work will be done in the next 3 to 4 weeks. First and foremost, it's to provide continuity to your child's Gould experience, both academically, athletically, advising, the entire Gould experience. Part of our task is really to think about and synthesize the best of face-to-face and remote learning. This spring has been, in many ways, a great experiment for our faculty and for our students in learning about how to teach and how to learn remotely. So we want to bring what we've learned from that forward. Perhaps most importantly, it's really essential that we design flexibility in our program and schedule so that we can go back and forth between situations where we have students here on campus and we're teaching face-to-face. And if we need to go remote at any point during next year, we may also have situations where we have some students on campus that we're teaching in person and other students who we're teaching remotely. So we really need to think carefully about flexibility in how we design this. And last but not least, we really need to think far beyond just learning in the conventional sense or in the classroom sense. And we really need to think also about the mind, body, and spirit. So we want to think about how our students will get their exercise, how they'll feed their soul during this period where we may be going from a face-to-face situation that we're very comfortable with to one in a remote or a hybrid situation, which is newer to us. And how do we feed our bodies and feed our souls in that environment? That's something our team is really going to think about in the coming weeks. In terms of how our group is organized, Katie Stack and Lauren Parker are working with about a dozen faculty members. Sara Shifrin and Adam Leff are working with a group of students who they'll be interviewing and will be sort of distilling their feedback from the spring. Brooke, Libby, and Jason Chase are working with a family and parent group. And in all three cases, we've developed surveys for the kids' experience this spring. So we'll be pulling data from a parent survey, a student survey, and a faculty survey. We also, and this is one of Tao's great ideas, I'd credit him with this idea, is an innovation think tank. So we're going to pull together some Gould alums and some innovators to really kind of push our thinking. So as we start to develop prototypes, we're going to push that out to this innovators group and really have them poke holes in it and brainstorm. So we really want, for that group, the sky's the limit to really sort of push our thinking. In terms of where we are now, we're in the top left of the slide. We're interviewing and surveying and kind of assessing our experience this spring. Down to the bottom left on priorities. This week, what we're doing right now on Wednesday at our end of the year faculty meeting, our teachers and coaches will be doing an after action review process where we really think about and distill what we've learned this spring. Our faculty will be starting some essential professional development in thinking about remote teaching and blended learning and face-to-face learning this week. And our innovators think tank is just about to be launched. So those are our current priorities this week. In terms of our process, right now we're at the stage, the first bullet point of empathizing with our spring experience. We'll be defining this week, our faculty will be defining this question of what is the Gould experience, what's at its heart, what's at its core. We'll be grappling with ideas and feedback, and in the first weeks of June, we'll start to be developing prototypes of new policies, new schedules, with flexibility being the byword. Throughout this time, we'll have these 5 core principles of Gould at our core. And I'll close with 7:27. Okay, so I'm right at the 7-minute limit. I'll close just with a note. Our groups will be using the design thinking process. So this is really a process of human-centered design where we think about the experience of our students learning this spring. We define the the issues and the problems that came through that experience. We ideate and brainstorm in our working groups new possibilities. As we prototype and put together sort of rough drafts of what the fall learning can look like, we'll push those out to our working groups and we'll get feedback on that. And design thinking, like many things in life, is an iterative process. So the first time you do it, you don't get it right. And so we'll be pushing out examples to these working groups through the month of June. So please be in touch if you're interested in being part of. If I did notice on the chat, there were some Gould students listening. So if you're a Gould student and like to be part of this, please reach out. Or of course, if you're a parent or family member, also reach out. And our group will be happy to answer questions later in the webinar. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
I think next we're going to the finance group.
Okay, great.
Go
Good
ahead.
evening, everyone. My name's Bill White. I'm interim CFO and class of 80. We have the smallest committee. My committee is of 2, Dave, Willis, and myself. We've been meeting pretty much daily, going through the budget to effect a smooth transition for him to take over the helm as CFO for next year. And it's really been a helpful experience, I think, to both of us. We've engaged some outside folks from attorneys and insurance folks who've been able to help give us sort of best practices as to what we should be doing during this time period. But our main focus has been to we started out with convening our group with a focus on planning for worst case scenarios. And we ran a number of sort of doomsday models and explored all the ways we could weather a extreme downturn in enrollment, or worse, not being able to return to school at all. Thankfully, each day brings us more information, and as the outlook has improved, our concentration as a committee has shifted to figuring out what needs to happen to be able to open in the fall in the best way possible. Gould faces a number of challenges financially under normal circumstances, but even more so now. With these, there are 3 sort of major drivers that I think about when that determine the health of the school. And you'll forgive me because I'm a business person. I think in terms of revenues and expenses. On the revenue side is our enrollment, and I meet regularly, weekly, with Chris Sparks, and have been following the pipeline of folks who are coming into the school. We had a lot more people who came to campus. We have a lot more applications this year, and it looks like we are going to have a good, solid base of students going into the fall. And Chris Sparks will kick me for it, but we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to have a really good, strong fall based on enrollment. So that is heartening to us in the finance world. The other area that we count on is a determining factor to the health of the school is philanthropy. And even in these trying times, I'd ask that you continue to make your generous financial support to Gould. The cost to run the school is not covered by tuition revenue alone. By April, we are relying on generous gifts from alumni, family, friends to cover the cost of school. We use prudent draws from our endowment to supplement the financial aid we offer. So those are sort of my 2 revenue drivers, and the big expense that we have, but which is what we are really mainly committed to, is having the best possible faculty and staff to perform our mission. In 2020, nearly 70% of our expenses are related to investment in our faculty and staff, providing them benefits, housing, and continuing education. While there may be some efficiencies to be found in the cost of heat, light, and power, building maintenance, and capital expenditures, Gould will maintain its very substantial commitment to robust instructional on-snow, music, and arts programming. While we've abandoned this doomsday forecasting for now, we have been concentrating on streamlining our operations as much as possible. We've made a concerted effort to utilize 12-month staff, purchase fuel at discounted rates, negotiate with vendors, defer major capital expenditures, and work with our financial institutions to provide liquidity. All of these savings will be directed towards providing resources for making the campus as healthy and safe as possible for our community in the fall. We've been meeting with team members from our food service operations, maintenance and cleaning staff, IT department, and faculty to get a sense of what changes are going to be necessary when we return to campus. Our priority is to make sure we provide resources necessary to allow our students, faculty, and staff to reconvene so that we can continue to offer an exceptional learning experience. We've made provisions in our current budget for hiring additional dining staff to serve food differently and to accommodate socially distanced dining schedules. Funds will be allocated for PPE, temperature and virus testing. We are investing in software and equipment that will allow faculty, should they need to teach remotely, the tools to do it more effectively. Our current class size is advantageous for keeping social distances, but some accommodations may need to be made. We are meeting regularly with our standing committees who are keeping us up to date on what potential expenses may require funding. There have been questions about whether we would be making refunds if the school needs to close or modify its operations in the fall. At this time, I can honestly say I don't know. The landscape has changed dramatically over the last 6 weeks. It would be difficult to project what changes may occur over the next 3 months. As I've said here, there are going to be some additional expenses this year. There may also be additional opportunities to reduce costs. It's challenging to estimate those cost savings from limiting operations once the school year has started. I wish I could give you a better answer, but there are too many variables at this time. And as we go down the path, hopefully we'll get more clarity. That's all I have for right now, and thank you. And I'll turn things over to Lindsay and Julie.
Actually, I'll take it from here. Thanks,
Okay.
Bill. Okay, so we do invite your questions. It looks like a few have started to come in, but please type them into the Q&A. And while we're waiting for that to generate some heat, I'll start with some of the questions that came in over the weekend when the initial invitation went out. So Olivia and Chris, your presentation said that the number one priority was protecting the health and well-being of our community, and the number two being protecting the continuity of a Gould education and experience. And as it were, those are the two questions that seem to have come up the most over the weekend. So we'll start with number two. By far, the most questions seem to be about the continuity of Gould education. And parents and students alike have mentioned class sizes, sports activities, experiential learning. Those things, I guess I would toss to Brad and Sara. And then after that, maybe to talk a little bit about day student integration, which you mentioned. And in the Q&A, someone asked a little bit about the boarding residential life piece.
Sure. So great questions. I'll try and frame it a little bit and then invite Sara, Jason to jump in as well. We'll be doing our very, very best to replicate your child's experience at Gould, the Gould that your child knows and loves. And we may need to do that in new ways. We may need to do that in different ways. We certainly may need to have different numbers of kids in classes. We may need to be scheduling meal times at different times. We may need to look at vacation times and have different vacations than what we're used to. We may need to limit the amount of travel that students have when we may need to keep students on campus more often and limit the amount of travel that they go home. So we'll be looking at a whole host of variables that we can manipulate so that we can ensure that the Gould that your kids love and that we love will be here next year. And it will likely be some combination of, quote unquote, the old Gould that we knew before this year, some combination of the new Gould that students and faculty were introduced this year, it certainly is our hope that most of your child's experience next year will be most like the old Gould that they're familiar with. But at times in this health crisis, we may need to have the flexibility to adjust and adapt and go back and forth in a very flexible way between both systems. So that's just kind of framing it broadly, and I invite Sara to add any comments.
Hi, everyone. As I've been listening to the presentations, I've been scrolling the attendee list. And as I scroll through the list, I welcome trustees like Carolyn Wolin, who has seen Gould for decades, to a lot of winter term students and families. And when I think about what your expectations are for continuity of learning and the experience you hope to get, my mind immediately goes to 4-point. And here's why. Because we love 4-point at Gould, and parents, you get so excited to think about your child going on an adventure for learning, that it's not so much the place and space and a fixed schedule that means learning. It's about mindset, and it's about skills. It's about inspiration, and it's about opportunity and challenges and feedback, discoveries, and problem solving. And so when I think about next year and the experience I'll have as a teacher, as a librarian, as a seminar leader, I just go right to the core of the Gould experience, and that's what we do really well with 4-point. We're actually quite practiced in that kind of disruptive learning where it's on the fly and it's on the go, but it never wavers for being intentional. And so as hard as this is to grapple with classrooms and expectations, and I'm a person who actually likes certainty and predictability, but what I'm certain about and what I can predict is why we love Gould is for the mindset and the skills, and it's for the inspiration and the opportunity. We're going to work hard to figure out the details and communicate that to you and to have you help us design the experience that you need. But for right now, I just get, and I just I'm confident that it's going to be tough, but it's actually what we love to do. So just hang your hat on why you love Gould and remind us of that. And I think we're going to be okay having a great learning experience.
I think I just
So-
add that while we're also preparing for pretty every scenario that we can think of, we're moving forward with technology acquisitions that will allow us to not only have an in-class environment and experience for your child, but also provide a hybrid environment if some of the students aren't able to attend class in person while others are, in order to maintain an educational environment for your students. We're working towards solutions for all of the possibilities.
Yeah, and then let me just jump in here for a minute too, if I may. This is Tao speaking again. You know, like I said at the very beginning of this, we don't have all of the answers yet, but we're working on finding them. And just to give people an understanding of the lengths that this group is going to, the answers to these questions aren't going to be ours alone. We're going to lean heavily on data. We're going to lean heavily on experts. Today, a number of us were on a webinar with the U.S. ski team. They have an outline of their plan to return to training. And the U.S. ski team is sharing those plans both for getting back in the gym, traveling to get on snow, how they're going to run camps, how they're going to do intake. These are models for Gould, and not just in snow sports, but you can parallel that to how do we get everyone back to campus. So the plans that we have in place for activities, the plans we have for return to campus, they're based on a breadth of information, a breadth of knowledge that we are digesting on a daily and on a weekly basis. A couple of weeks ago, we were on a call with headmasters from international schools that have already reopened, talking about their experiences. We have another one tomorrow that we're attending. And, at some point, we're going to catalog a list of all of the different experts, resources, webinars that we listen to come up with the solutions and share them robustly. But there are others that are helping define and answer these questions for us. So when we ask, what will sports look like? That was one of the questions that came in during the week. What are sports going to look like next year? So, we've been categorizing things on our task force. There's the known, there's the unknown, and there's the unknowable. We don't know yet. One of the unknowns is if our sports leagues are going to be allowed to continue this fall or next year. But what we do know is that athletics are incredibly important to a Gould life, and not just because of scores and wins and losses and ties, but because to have healthy human beings, you need to have a healthy mind, healthy body, and a healthy spirit. And all of those fuel and support each other. So the reason that Bob Harkins is on the continuity of teaching and learning task force and not on the reopen school task force is because athletics is a big part of our curriculum. It's a big part of why kids are at the school. So we know we need to have activities and outlets for the kids. That's a known. We know that we're going to do that next year. On the panelist call from international schools a couple of weeks ago, they talked about the sports that they're allowed to do. They can play tennis, they can play softball, they can play baseball, they can go biking and do cycling. On snow sports seem to be something that is easy to do as long as it's not a high aspiration mass start kind of sport. So we have to rethink maybe how a Nordic race runs, or cross country running, or mountain biking, but they can still happen. A lot of these individual sports, it's more unknown the team sports. And what I can tell you is that the process, what we heard today from the U.S. ski team, they talk about the concept of nesting and creating pods. As they do intake for a camp or for a project, there's a process by which they can bring people in. They can quarantine them, or they can do 2 negative tests within 24 hours or spaced 24 hours apart. And then they can create a pod of people who can function and work together. It's easy to isolate them. It's easy to contact trace. If someone does get sick, you can quickly and easily separate people and isolate and quarantine. We're going to be using and borrowing and leaning heavily on a lot of these models as we develop our plan, both for what returning to campus is going to look like, what our fall activities, sports, farm and forest. Sara mentioned 4-point. All of these things are going to be based around science, guidelines from the CDC, from the state, from the federal government, from health organizations, our medical professionals, and also the governing bodies that are already providing an incredible amount of knowledge and information. So I just want to mention, that piece. Do we know what the soccer team is going to look like in the fall? Not yet. Are we confident that we are going to have activities for our kids? Absolutely, 100%. Yes. So I just wanted to jump in and mention that piece, and also talk a little bit about our tactics here. And our tactics are not this group working in a vacuum trying to figure these things out. Our tactics are to go cast a wide net, to go far and wide and gather as much data, as much information, as many best practices as we can from organizations around the country and around the globe. So I would say that 90% of what we've done so far has been digesting information, and will probably continue to be. It's an incredible volume of work that we're analyzing on a daily basis.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so Olivia and Chris, the second part of that kind of Gould experience seems to be around dorm life, dining hall, closed campuses, day students. And I know, as Tao said, there are many unknowns, but what might we be thinking about? What kinds of things can we share with families that we might be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think we're definitely going to follow the CDC guidelines that they're putting out, and this is changing on a daily basis. So the things that we are thinking about and that are really guiding our work is kind of this social distancing, masking, really strong hand hygiene, and kind of looking at our traffic patterns on campus. So looking at our whole campus, that includes dorm life, that includes our dining halls, and what are some of these best practices that we can implement in those areas. Increasing hand washing stations, increasing signage, all of these guidelines that they put out are things that we are going to have on campus for our planning.
I'll chime in a little bit too on, there was some questions about a closed campus, and we mentioned that you have day students and you have employees. And this is where it's really important that we have community commitment to be the best we can be in honoring these guidelines. I think closed campus could mean boarding students, they're on campus. Day students and employees, you know, you're going home and you're doing the right thing, and then you're coming to school and then you're going home. We all want to be together. So for us to do that, we have to commit to behaving in the best way possible to keep our community safe. So that's a stab at the closed campus question. Schedule and holidays, that came up as well. And we are looking at some models that folks have hinted at. Some other colleges have already announced. So the possibility of having a Thanksgiving break start and having students stay home through the holidays, and having a brief period of online learning, remote learning like we did this spring to get us through that, really to minimize the comings and goings to campus. So that's one of the things we're looking at pretty strongly right now. And dorm life, as you come into campus, we'll figure out how to phase that in to keep everyone healthy. You may start in a room by yourself until your roommate meets the criteria where you can live together. So back to that pod or nesting philosophy. So all of those things will happen. And I think the dining hall will be thinned out. We'll have to have more time period for folks to go in and eat, and a certain number allowed, spaced out accordingly to meet needs. And in the fall and spring, we're lucky enough to have a great outdoor campus and venue. So maybe we have more picnics outside.
Great, that was really helpful. Another question that was very frequent in the over the weekend questions and also in the chat had to do with testing. Bill mentioned that before, and many families were interested in what some of the health protocols might look like, and how that testing and those procedures might transpire. So Olivia, that's probably a natural for you.
So testing is probably my top priority for figuring out exactly what we're going to do from day one returning to campus. The testing landscape definitely changes daily in the state of Maine, and things are improving. So we are hoping that we'll have more guidance from the state of Maine about how frequently we should be doing testing on campus, while working with our other local health communities to make sure that we have enough testing for our whole campus. The timeline or frequency of testing, we don't have an exact plan at the moment, but it is something that we are looking to plan for the fall and throughout the year. But there will be a solid testing plan for fall and orientation.
Someone asked tonight in the Q&A about what we know about Sunday River's plans. I know Tao just mentioned some of the thinking around how on-snow sports can proceed, but does anybody want to talk a little bit about what they have heard from Sunday River?
I'll tackle that, Brooke, because I've been in constant communication with Dana Bolin up at Sunday River through the spring. I had a talk with him just the other day about a concern someone had that Boyne may be selling a limited number of seasons passes next year. And I reached out to Dana to make sure that that wouldn't impact Gould. He said, not a chance. So, you know, we can see across the globe, a number of ski resorts have already opened in Europe. There's ski resorts open in California and in Oregon and also in Colorado. The real challenge for those resorts has simply been people getting to them, because each of those places, there's international travel bans. But each of the places, at least nationally, are located in states that have 14-day quarantine periods. So it's really difficult to conceive going someplace, quarantining, getting on snow, and then having to return and do it all over again. We assume that those restrictions are going to lessen. And once we get everyone back to campus in Bethel, and Sunday River opens next winter, which I've been assured that it will, What the biggest logistical challenge for us, I think, is simply going to be transportation to and from the mountain, but we can solve that. So right now we've got examples from around the country that resorts are open and that they're continuing to open. Killington, where I'm at right now, opens this coming weekend for mountain biking, and they will be open next winter. Sunday River will be open. And we have a strong working partnership with the resort, and we're going to continue to work on leveraging that and making sure that we have a good plan in place for those activities. I think that will provide a tremendous outlet for our kids, all of the kids at school. Next winter, we want to make sure that we're able to do that in a protected way.
Great. Bill and Dave, you probably can see in the Q&A that there's a question about making adjustments to school year tuition to adjust for the impact of COVID-19. Do you want to comment any further on that?
We've consulted with a number of other New England boarding schools, and we have been, in some cases, experiencing some savings in certain areas, but we've also had some increased cost in others. And with the financial aid that we've been, where financial aid sort of kicks in for the last couple of months of the school year, we've not been making refunds this year. That's not the way, we have not been doing that. I think looking forward, we've got to look, it's going to be, I don't really, as I said before, I don't really have a great answer as to what, I think we have to look at things as they go and figure out whether there are going to be any efficiencies that allow us to make any discounts going forward. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Dave.
Well, I think it kind of ties with what Tao was saying a couple minutes earlier, which is there's things we know and there's things we don't know. And at this point, we know what we have been charging in tuition, and we know what it costs to run the school. And we are most focused, I think, on trying to make the experience as best as it can be, and we using the numbers that we currently have. And if for some reason something drastically changes, then we probably would make adjustments moving forward. But at this point, it's, you know, full steam ahead, and based on how all these other presentations, you know, the foot's firmly on the gas pedal to have it be an amazing experience. So the short answer is no, we're not making any adjustments yet, but we may.
We have a question in the Q&A about international students traveling to campus and about a plan for them. Does anybody want to comment on how we're going to be working with our international students and supporting them, because they may have some unique challenges?
Sure, thank you, Brooke. I'll jump in, and then if any others want to add. It's important not to generalize too much about international students and their experience. We have 8 students on campus who have been here all spring with us, and some, in fact, are going to be with us all summer. We have other international students who are here in the United States and will be in the United States all summer, and will be able to return to campus fairly easily in August. And then, of course, we have some international students that are at home, either in Japan, South Korea, China, et cetera, and they may find it very challenging to return to campus in late August. We certainly hope that's not the case, but that's certainly something we're going to need to take seriously and consider. So we'll be looking at all options for that. We'll be looking at possibility of offering remote instruction for those students until they can get back here on campus. We'll be looking at when they can get here on campus, limiting their travel so that they're sort of here for the duration until they finish the year, and keep them here over breaks. And that's to some degree what we're doing with this small pod of international students that are here on campus this summer. Does anyone else want to chime in on that question?
I can just make a comment on it, Brad. You know, there's multiple programs at Gould Academy that define the place, and our international population is one of them. I was on campus last in January and had the privilege of being able to sit with a group of students for about an hour. And it was an incredible experience. They had better answers and better questions than anyone I've encountered yet. I expect that to continue. But they all universally commented on the presence of international students as being a signature aspect of Gould that they love. So, there's a lot of complexity involved in bringing our international students back, but we are committed to it. We need a little bit more time to flesh out the details on what that will look like, both transportation, picking them up, isolating them, bringing them back to campus, so on and so forth. But I will just say that we are as committed to this group of students as any others. And we're going to lean on a lot of other organizations and guidelines from our government, from our state, CDC, and other institutional best practices to make sure that we've got a good plan in place. We also expect, and we've had a lot of conversation about the fact that Gould Academy may never go back to a closed campus. And, this is one of the places where our finance team starts, sort of pulling their hair going, well, what will that cost? But the reality is that there may always be a group of students at school for as long as this situation persists. And so if we do a closed campus through the fall, have a longer period where kids return home, we bring them back, we do a closed campus through the spring, we are expecting and planning that there's a number of students that will need to be on campus through that downtime, including, in all likelihood, our competitive on-snow winter sports athletes. So, we have thoughts in mind. Like I said, we don't have firm details yet on this, but we're considering every option and every possibility when we think about our international students. We want them back. We expect them to be back. We expect them to be strong, participating, and much loved members of our community.
I'll just
Great.
comment too
And
that
let me just go ahead, Chris.
that CVIS has made some changes to how students can stay active. So if they are remote learning and they're in the full course load, they can continue to study from their home country if for some reason they can't get here. So I think that's important to note, that you will not be left behind. We will make accommodations to make this possible for you to be in school at Gould, even if you're away, until you can get back here.
Great. And I was only going to clarify, we use the phrase closed campus in two very different ways. And so for anybody who might be confused, we talked about closed campus earlier in terms of closed boundaries of campus and whether students were staying on campus to protect that health and safety piece. And then Tao was referencing possibly school being open year round to support learning and students on campus at all times. So those two different phrases. Dorm life has come up a number of times in the chat, and then I think we have to wind up, but I didn't want to close up without asking what kinds of considerations might we be thinking about for dorm life?
Some of the things that we've been discussing have been staying on the floor that you live on. When we get back to that podding or nesting model that we have to look at, we still have a lot to figure out when it comes to living in the dorms. Bathroom spaces, having limitations on that, and extra cleaning. And students, you may not like to hear this, but you may need to help with a lot of that cleaning to make it possible. But we will have to follow social distancing guidelines and accommodate and adjust and be adaptable to make that possible. So we want it to be as close to normal as what you know it to be, so you can socialize with your friends and have a really healthy residential living experience. But know that there'll be changes, and we may have to limit the number of people in a room. You may not be able to visit another room. You have to visit in a lounge where you can be spaced out. So those things are important to think about. I don't know if there's more specific question about residential life, but happy to talk more if there's more specifics.
And a really prominent question right now, passed to you, Julie, is about the specifics of when a plan is going to roll out. People seem very appreciative about all of the complexity of what we're working on, but they also want to know some hard deadlines. So can you share a little bit of that communication plan that I referenced earlier, and then also deadlines about notifications.
Absolutely. And thank you for the clarification on closed campus. You know, working remotely when students aren't here is a different thing from when they're here, but we limit their travel elsewhere. That's an excellent point. Language has not yet caught up with the COVID pandemic. We are evolving new terms day to day, which is a challenge for us in our communication with you, but an important one. And so one of the things we agreed on very, very early is that the weekly newsletter families receive throughout the year, and new families have already just started to receive it the last couple of weeks, will continue throughout the summer. There will be a weekly newsletter for families enrolled in campus this fall, so that we can keep bringing you answers as we have them and outline the plans as we know it. And for those of you who are not going to be students on campus, alumni, past parents, others, there will continue to be a monthly newsletter, the one that we call Husky Tales, and that will also outline our thinking. But when we have major releases throughout the summer, those will go to the greater community. So do make sure that you are following our email groups, that you whitelist communications at Gould Academy. If you are getting too many emails from Gould, please don't tell Constant Contact that. Please tell us that, because then when important emails do come, it won't just be that newsletter, that weekly newsletter that you're not getting. You won't get anything from us. So try and work with us on your communications. We don't want to overwhelm your email box, but we want to make sure people who are looking for information in a timely manner get it. So that's our plan: weekly for incoming families and monthly for everybody else, with special mailings throughout the summer. That said, the types of things we talked about this week, the types of things that faculty are looking at in their meetings this week from the surveys will be put together into a plan we hope to release Friday going into the coming weekend. So look for that in your email box. We will also have a page on our website, as we do now. If you click on the COVID-19 header at gouldacademy.org, it loops through right now. It's commencement and experiential learning and on snow and COVID, and they cycle through. That COVID will be replaced shortly with the reopening link with a web page, and every newsletter that we send out, every letter will be linked to from that document, so you can go back and see previous communications from us. So every COVID letter we've sent out since March is on that web page now, and that web page will get redesigned, but there will be a place, and we will drive you to it in those weekly newsletters. So if you miss something, there's a way to go back and see it. It's not like you missed everything. So I hope that helps reassure you that we will be in touch and we will continue to answer your questions.
Okay, so a summary report this Friday, June 5th, and then a larger report with perhaps firmer dates on July 1. Is that correct?
Certainly around July 1, there will be another major update. We don't know what form that will take yet. Some of that will be decided based on how much state and federal guidelines have changed.
Got it. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone. And before I pass it to Tao, who has the last word, I do want to remind parents that we really need your help. We did send out a survey last week that was in the weekly newsletter. Jason and I are going to resend it to you in another email tomorrow. But we really need your feedback about your child's experience this past spring. So if you could take a few minutes and fill that out, we would really, really appreciate it. It will help guide this work. And again, thank you for being here and for all the questions, and I'll pass it to Tao.
Thank you, Brooke. And I just want to share my appreciation again for this group of subcommittee chairs and for the other subcommittee members and the working group folks that are participating in this process, and also to you, our parents, and our students for being on this call tonight. I think my favorite part of the evening came in the form of one of the comments that it looks like a student posted at the very beginning of this, saying that they are so appreciative that we're not shutting down the school and they just want their sanity back. So I think that precisely sums up the way the rest of us are feeling too. And like I said, I usually look to the kids for inspiration. So thank you for posting that. I look forward to meeting you in person. I think it was maybe Lewis who posted that. So my closing thoughts are just to reiterate again, the volume of work that this group is doing. We have some things that we have answers for. There's the first iteration of the plan that's going to be released this Friday. You'll see a copy of that. The second iteration of the plan should be released on or around July 1st. And with respect to everyone's questions about timing and planning, you need that time in order to be able to plan properly. But we look forward to sending out regular updates through the weekly newsletter, posting them on our website, and at any point in time, please reach out to us at Gould Academy with your questions. We'll make sure the next newsletter contains a link, an email address that you can send questions to, or a way that you can push your questions along. My final closing thought is this. When I was coaching at Gould and teaching, I taught in the history department, the foreign language department, the English department, and I coached a number of different sports, lacrosse, skiing, mountain biking. I ran the outing club for a couple of years. I was a young faculty member and I was just cutting my teeth, and I would spend hours preparing my lesson plans, both my athletic lesson plans and my academic lesson plans. And my philosophy back then was that you plan for everything, and then you plan on everything changing. And I don't think that there could be a truer statement right now for where we're at. Like I said before, there's the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. The unknowable is almost not even worth worrying about. We have to plan around what we know today. And that is what is guiding all of our plans. There are a lot of questions about spacing of desks and restrictions. We are planning as if we had to open school tomorrow based on what we know now. But we're also planning and expecting that by the time we get back to campus, things will have changed. And they'll continue to change throughout the school year. We need to remember that we have to remain nimble, that we're going to have to pivot quickly, both now and in the future. And we just want to make sure that everyone is prepared for that. Their expectations are set. What we know today may not be what we know tomorrow. What's unknown tomorrow might not be unknown a couple months from now. So thank you for keeping an open mind. Thank you for your support. Thank you to Brooke for moderating this. That was phenomenal. And looking forward to seeing you all in person soon, very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you so much.